Did you hear yourself?
That was you.
I heard myself. My radio voice is not good.
No, it's great.
Free college degrees based on all of the opportunities that are out here and available to our students.
Oftentimes, as parents, I think we want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience adversity.
Yeah.
Here are your hosts, David and Danita Bailey.
Well, good morning. Welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Age Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey.
According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, more than 40% of American children will experience the divorce of their parents, which can lead to the upheaval of their homes and potentially their schoolwork. One study shows that children of divorce tend to fall behind in their math and social skills and may struggle to catch up with their peers. So my parents actually got divorced when I was, I think, 9, might have been 10. And I remember they got divorced in the middle of the school year. And I think I was a fifth grader, I think. And the school that we went into, I ended up in middle school, I think it was. Does middle school start at 6th grade? It's a little blurry. I'm 43 now.
Well, I mean, some schools go up to, elementary schools go up to 6th grade.
Yes.
Some districts have intermediate schools, 5th and 6th grade, and then
Right.
some have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So
Right.
it all depends on.
So it was quite a shock that when we moved to this new school district, I was suddenly, and I had a locker and I was changing classes. And so that was a little bit stressful because, when you're in elementary school and you have just the one teacher and, I had a particularly sweet teacher that was, huggy and, you stay in one place and you're
Right.
taken care of by one person. And then I had multiple teachers and, that was quite a big change that I wasn't anticipating. And in the middle of the school year. It never is fun to move in the middle of the school year.
Yeah, and just adjusting and not just going to a new school, but your parents no longer together and having to process that. I had a lot of kids during, when I was teaching, when, they would tell me, parents would tell me, we just separated or, we recently are divorced and, just to be mindful of that. And so, the behavior that I saw in students wasn't necessarily them just acting out. It was pain.
Yeah. Trauma.
Yeah, it's trauma. And so I had to be mindful of that when engaging with them as well. So, yeah, it's not easy.
Did you see a big difference in some of these kids?
Oh, yeah. I mean, either they're very despondent or wilding out. I mean, it was either one or the other. And everyone has their way of coping.
Yeah.
And so, their coping mechanisms were very different. And then on top of all that, you still have to learn how to solve one-step, one-variable equations, and probably not on the top of their priority list. That could be the least of their concerns, and we still have to somehow get through. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of ours in preparation for this. She said that her parents were divorced when she was younger, and she said that she would go to school and just think about her parents. She was so distracted, and she was trying to think of what she could do to get them back together.
Yeah.
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 So.
I mean, probably the guilt and wondering, was it their fault? And all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, you do wonder. So I'm excited about this episode. It's a little bit sad, but I know that our guests are going to share some great information because, like we were saying, it's complicated and emotions are high, and sometimes it's not an amicable split.
Right.
But still, you have to do what's in the best interest of the child. So the two guests that we have today are well versed in dealing with custody and joint custody. Just joint custody.
Custody and joint custody. Yeah.
Yes. And I know
there
we're
a
going to have some
difference?
great. Well, we're going to find out.
We'll find out.
We're going to
Yes.
find out. So before we go any further, let me let you know that it does take a village. If you hear a great parenting tip or nugget of advice, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag SchoolDaysShow and hashtag IamSchoolDays. And also, we want you to be a part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call at 214-431-5062. So Dave, who do we have with us today?
Okay, so we have back with us is he our first return guest?
Yes.
Yes. Michael Flores, back.
I wish I had a clap track.
Yeah. Yes, back in full effect. But Michael, for those of you that hear him the first time, he is the owner and director of Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. Michael has worked in many settings, including nonprofit, treatment centers, and private practice. Brighter Possibilities currently has contracts with Tarrant County Juvenile Probation, where they provide counseling services for their youth and their families. Brighter Possibilities also receives court orders from the Tarrant County Family Court to provide counseling for parents and children. Michael is the developer of Team Integrative Solution Focused Therapy, designed to work with at-risk youth and treatment providers. He is the proud father of 3 children and a blessed, or as we say, blessed husband. Welcome back, Michael. We're glad you're here again.
I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, and joining him from Brighter Possibilities is Brooke DeLuna. She's a graduate of A&M, and she received her Master's of Science at Tarleton. She is a 13-year veteran educator. What did you teach?
Special education.
Special education. And she's been a counselor for 3 years, working with young children, doing play-based therapy. She also works with court-designated cases with custody and abuse battles. She's married, happily married with 2 young boys. So thank you for joining us, Brooke.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's jump right in. So tell us, what is the effect of custody, of joint custody versus single-parent custody on a child?
Yeah, so there's 3 types. So you have the sole custody, custodial rights, you have primary, and then you have joint. So there's 3 different ones. So I guess to explain the differences, if you have sole custodial rights, then you make all the decisions based on the child and the child's needs. If you have primary custody, then you get to make the majority of the decisions, but it's with the parental influence. And then if you have joint managing conservatorship or joint custody, then what you have is you have both parents making decisions over certain topic areas, like if it's doctors, choosing counselors, those kinds of things, dental, stuff like that, schools.
So you said with the primary, so if there's one person that is the primary and the other person has influence.
Correct.
but
So
not necessarily decision-making
right. So what
authority.
it might say in the documentation, if a person has primary, then it would say that this person gets to make the decision, but they have to consult with the other parent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything to make that they consult, but it's basically just
They still get to make the
I
decision.
have a say, but okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. So, just in my case, I don't really know what the custody situation was, honestly. I was young, so it was just kind of like, okay, where am I going? But I lived with my mother first, and then I lived with my father, and it was just kind of I never had 2 homes. You know what I mean? I know that's with joint custody, I guess. It was kind of like a visitation sort of thing.
Right.
And it wasn't really visitation. It was just like, you want to go over your dad's house, that sort of thing. So what is the impact of the different types of custody? Is it,
Right.
Are people more stable in one situation versus the other?
Right. So custody, you're looking at the rights that you have over the child, and then when you look at possession and access, that's how the time has changed. So going between 2 homes has nothing to do with custody. It has to do with possession and access.
Okay.
And that can be designed either by the court or it can be an agreement by the parents on how that works. So the impact of that on a child is every kid's different. In a court setting, there's usually three types of possession and access schedules that are developed. You usually have a true 50-50, which is like a week-on, week-off schedule.
Right.
So 1 week they're with mom, 1 week they're with dad. And then you have like a expanded standard visitation schedule, which is like a Thursday to a Monday. So Thursday evening, one parent gets that child every first, third, and fifth weekends of the month, and they take the child to school on Monday morning. And then the other parent has the other part of the time. A standard visitation schedule is typically like a Friday to a Sunday, and that's every first, third, and fifth weekend. And then the summer times are alternated. Like some parents will get a whole month in July,
Right.
the one that didn't get the majority of the time during the year. So it's not a clean deal. It's hard on the kids because what happens to them is, well, let's say dad's planning a trip or I'm getting to go do this thing and he wanted to invite the kid, but it's not on his time. It's on the mom's time. And if mom and dad don't get along very well, sometimes the parents utilize that as a way of holding power and saying, well, they're not going to go with you. And so the kid's the one that ultimately misses out.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it had nothing to do with the child. It had to do with the parental battle and the parental struggle.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I would think emotionally it would be more difficult to do it like that. We, like I was saying, we kind of just were like, you want to go over your dad's house and then you can go. But kind of having a schedule where it's like, these first, third, and fifth. Did you say?
Yep.
That seems like that's a lot of upheaval with regularity, and so kind of how does that impact them? I know it's different for every child, but that just seems like a lot of moving around.
Yeah, Brooke can answer that, how it impacts kids with schedules. I know she's had a couple cases like that.
I mean, I agree with Michael. It's very different for every kid. I have a lot of kids right now who the first, third, and fifth works great for them because it's predictable. So they always know, every other weekend I go to dad's house on Friday after school. The Thursdays are where I see a lot of struggle for kids because a lot of them will get Thursdays with mom or dad, even if it's not their weekend. So they'll go home Thursday night, hang out with mom and dad, and then they go back to mom's house Friday because they don't have weekends. So it's like one little, so they can see them in the middle of the week.
Okay.
So that seems to be a struggle. Thursdays are always hard for kids who have that. You don't see a whole lot anymore of I want to go to dad's this weekend. Can I go? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of what we get is not a lot of cohesiveness between the split up parents. So the kids do not have the freedom to say, I want to go to dad's this weekend. Is that okay? Oh, sure. I'll take you over there. It's very regulated based on the schedule. Okay. And a lot of those possessions are based on, this is what the court order says. So this is what we're doing.
And so I would imagine with that kind of schedule, it's very difficult to navigate school and different boundaries and stuff. Kind of talk about what some of the issues that arise when you've got situations like that.
The easiest one is I left my homework at dad's. That's why I couldn't bring it.
I heard that
school.
all the time.
It's a good excuse.
Say Dave knows this.
Yeah. I mean, I said, okay, guys, let's turn it in. And Mr. Bailey, or either the parent would say, hey, they were with their dad. Usually that was the dad. They were with their dad. Why was the dad? Why is it always the dad? They were with their dad this weekend. And
because mom's not gonna let that happen,
right? Well, I guess, that's another topic for another day. But it was typically they forgot their homework, or dad didn't know, or dad forgot, and they'll bring it when they get a chance or something. And so I saw that all the time.
Well, and you think extracurricular activities, social life, medication, all of those things are thrown into the air every time they switch houses. Oh, my best friend's birthday is Saturday, but dad lives 30 minutes away and he's not going to let me go, and my best friend's close to mom's house, so I missed the birthday party. Or, mom's paying for private tutoring and I'm with dad this weekend and he won't let me go. Or private baseball, pitching lessons. And they miss those things on their off weekends when there's not that cohesiveness between the parents. Or one parent will set them up for things that are, okay, I'll sign you up for soccer. Soccer's every weekend. Well, dad doesn't like soccer. So on dad's weekends, I miss my games because I don't get to go on dad's weekends.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with school. It's, mom may be on top of them, and Friday you come home, get your homework done, and we're good for the weekend. And dad may say, let's do a little as we go through the weekend. And then it doesn't get done. So they get home Sunday night and their homework's not done. So it's just a constant wave of change.
Yeah.
Well, looks like we have
a caller.
Yay. Go ahead.
All right.
Hi, welcome to School Days. What's your name, caller, and where are you calling from?
My name is Will Reeves. I'm calling from Dallas, Texas.
Hi.
How may we help you?
Oh, I was just trying to just talk about the co-parenting and about the non-custodial parent and the custodial parent.
Okay, what's your comment?
My comment is I'm really trying to get some information because I've been dealing with that for a long time as well. And I've been dealing with that, and it really hurts the child in a psychological type of way, emotional. And by having both of the parents in two different households, and one child is the child is in the middle, and the mother is on one side and the father on the other side. And I see that it really hurts them because they're in a tug-of-war state. And having a positive co-parenting system will actually help a lot, because I've been dealing with a negative co-parent system because we always arguing, we always fussing and fighting and stuff. And I'm trying to really just keep that at a lower type of minimum so we won't be arguing. So I'm just trying to ask a question of what type of components that I can put in place so we can actually solve this problem.
It's a great question.
That is the $1 million question, and,
Yeah.
and I love it. So some of the things that we can probably answer is based on the successes that we've had with court cases that we get referred. And one of the things that we typically will ask parents to think about is when they're on two sides of the plane and the kid's in the middle, a lot of time both parents are arguing over what they think is best for the child. Mm-hmm. And so they're requesting things out of this bucket. Like, this is what I want out of this, and this is what I want out of this. And so when we're doing that kind of conversation, nothing's getting resolved because we're just talking about what's broken and what needs to be removed.
Right.
So the way you do it is the first thing is asking the question of the other parent and saying, what is it that you need to see happen differently so that we can get to a place where this can work? Mm-hmm. And it's about what needs to be put into the bucket. So it's what do you need? What do you need? The conversation about how can I help? How can I help? What do you need? What can we fulfill? Is a more typical conversation about solution building. Mm-hmm. And so that's where a lot of parents have a struggle because if you're still involved in litigation, you don't want to have that conversation because you're kind of armed with your stuff to take to court to defend yourself. So you have to be willing to say, I don't want to defend, I want to grow. And part of the growth is what do we need to do to help our child benefit from both of us? What do you need and what do I need? And be willing to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is what we would do in therapy with parents.
Yeah.
Does that help answer that question?
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds real good, man.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for calling.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, you have a great day.
All right, thanks a
You
lot.
too.
Bye-bye.
He brought up a great point. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much you talk. You need a mediator of some sort. Mm-hmm. So what are your options for somebody to come and help you with your ex work stuff out?
Well, so there's a bunch of different, Brooke knows this too, there's a bunch of different people involved when it comes to trying to resolve cases. And so the court may appoint one of these three people. You can have a parent facilitator, a parenting coordinator, or you could have a counselor or therapist like what we would do, right, that kind of sees anyone in the family. And what we love about what our judges typically do is they'll give us permission to kind of dictate how the therapy should go. So if we want a certain parent involved, we have the ability to do that, and that helps us out a lot. So those are three different individuals. And then you talked about mediators. Mediators are typically either former attorneys or people who are certified to mediate. A lot of judges will do that. Former judges will do mediations. And what they do is they really put both parents in two separate rooms. They go back and forth between the rooms until they can get to a place of resolving whatever the issues that brought them in.
Whoa.
But they're going over everything from custody arrangements to visitation and access to, I think they even talk child support. Is that right, Brooke? I think that comes up too in mediation. So those are different ways that people try to get this resolved. So mediation, parenting facilitation, parenting coordination, and then counseling. So those are all the levels. Is there any specific question you have on what those are?
I want to know how you find those people. Are those? It sounds like some of those people can be court appointed. Mm-hmm. Do you pay for that?
Yes.
Can you get? Well,
Yes,
I know
yes,
you
yes.
pay for counseling. Is there a way to get some of that for free, or depending on income and things like that?
Right. So, Brooke, I'll let you answer some of that for the counseling piece if you'd like, and I can do the other part.
So when they're court ordered to come to counseling for us, the order will state what the payments look like. So that's all court based. There is some practices. I mean, when it comes to financial, some practices take insurance, some don't. Some offer sliding scales, some have just a standard fee. So a lot of times people will get that referral and may call and say, hey, I need to come in for counseling. I'm not court ordered. And they may say our fee is $150 an hour. Okay, I can't afford that.
Right.
So can you refer me someone that will? There's a lot of resources. I'm more familiar with Fort Worth because that's where I'm from, that will offer free counseling to families. They'll come in and do an initial intake, and then they'll direct you towards the counseling that you need. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the route that you would go. If you're court ordered, then, the practices that take insurance would figure out the insurance route and then kind of go from there as far as the payments.
Yeah, and so with parenting coordinators and facilitators, those are typically designed by a court ordering them to it. So they'll say, I'm going to order you guys to parent coordination or parent facilitation, whichever one it is. It's usually ordered that parents would go to that. Mm-hmm. And then counseling, there are people that seek it out on their own before court. They don't need court to do that. But there's lots of times when they are in court, the judge will order the counseling or actually remove a counselor and place a new counselor in place because they know that counselor does this kind of work, if that makes any sense.
And so how does that happen? You're having an issue, like maybe something's not being something that is in the specifications. I don't know what I'm trying to say, is not being done. Like you're
Right.
supposed to take your child at this point. And so you go to court and you can't get, and that's when somebody's going to be brought in.
Sure, it can have. So there's two judges. There you have an associate judge and a district judge, and most of the things that are being adapted or changed are typically happening with the associate judge.
Okay.
And they're doing that to try to see if we can get to a resolution and get something that's workable. And so that's where all the modifications are usually happening.
Okay.
When you get to a district judge, which is usually the same judge in the court, because there's 2 judges in every court, the district judge is making the final say-so on this is what we're doing. That's your
Okay.
final court hearing.
Okay.
But the way it happens is a parent will come in on either side and usually just give their complaint. This is what's not happening. My child is having trouble in school. My child's having this kind of trouble, and I think because dad's residence is this way. And so then what the judge may do is say, I think we want to do some counseling. Or a lot of times we'll have this relationship is no longer working. A parent will come in and complain, I think mom's alienating me from the child, or the other parent will say that. And then what ends up happening is the judge says, well, I'm not sure if that's happening, but I'm going to court order counseling so that we can reunify or reconcile the relationship from the parent that's missing out. And so then we'll get orders like that. So come in.
And another common order we get is parents who have had supervised visitation, and they're going to start getting more regular visitation. They'll have the child start coming to counseling to make sure that the increased time with that other parent is going successfully.
Okay. Got it.
So with separation, divorce, are the effects on the child similar to, or is it trauma? I mean, the effects on the children. I mean, I'm assuming yes, but just wanted to get your insights on that.
Sure.
I think it can be, absolutely. I think it. I think I've seen both routes where children have handled it great, and other routes where they haven't. I think co-parenting successfully is really the key, and the way you communicate that information to the child. If they know mom and dad are fighting, mom and dad don't like each other, mom did this wrong, dad did this wrong, then they're stuck in the middle. Like the caller said earlier, they're stuck in the middle because there's constant bickering. If there's that unity, parents sit the kids down, here's the changes, here's why, in kids' terms, and they walk through it as a team, the children often don't see it as trauma. They just see it as the next step in their life. And when you put that counseling in place, they feel supported through it, and they feel strong and know, I can get through this because this is what's best for everybody.
Yeah. So what are some of the symptoms if you're mom and a dad and you have the child, and maybe caught up in whatever's happening between the two of them, but you have this child here, what are some symptoms that they can be looking for to say, maybe my child is going through some trauma right now and didn't even recognize it?
So I actually developed something to help parents and kids, and I've gotten confirmation from almost every kid when I've done this. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep using this. And so what I do is on a whiteboard in the office, I'll draw a triangle. It's like similar to this. Mom and dad on either side. I break the link between mom and dad, because that's where that's typically what happened, right? The link has been broken. There's a divorce. The kid's at the top of the triangle. And so what I tell parents is when that hole that exists between both parents is not filled, then the child has to do something to help it. Like you said, that one friend of yours, Danita, was sitting in school and thinking about how to fix the problem.
Right.
So they do one of 3 things. This is one of 3 roles that kids will take. So I don't know if it's a symptom or more of a reaction to the situation. But so you have parentification, right? And that's a level that kids take. But what really happens is the kid's trying to resolve the problem. And so the 3 roles I have a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the kiddo who's trying to create peace between the parents. So when they go to mom's, they'll do whatever mom needs them to do, or say whatever mom needs them to say, so that mom can be okay. So if they think mom doesn't want me to have a good time at dad's, when they come back from dad's, they'll tell mom, it was boring, we didn't really do much. It's to help fulfill what they think mom needs. That's the gatekeeper. He's the kid trying to keep peace between both parents. Then you have the kid who doesn't do it intentionally, but actually creates problems. And so they'll go to school and they'll fail. They'll mess up things, because here's what happens when they mess up and make a mistake. Who ends up having to come?
Mom and dad.
Mom and dad
They
have to come together.
Right.
Yes. They come into counseling. They go to the principal's office, right? So mom and dad are having to come. So by creating a problem, I've reinforced the unity between my parents.
Wow.
So you have that.
And it's
kid.
unintentional.
The
Sometimes
kid,
it's not, probably,
Yes,
but
yes.
if it's reinforced, then it's intentional.
Yeah.
But usually it's not reinforced right away. It's reinforced by the kids seeing their interaction.
Yeah.
So I've done that to parents and said, hey, I noticed your kid's been getting a lot in trouble since the divorce. I said, but look where you are today. You're sitting in my office together. Isn't that interesting? So do you think it's possible that they've learned that if I continue to create problem, you have to continue to come together. So I said,
Wow.
think about that for a second. When you guys make this work, do they have the need to create a problem?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. Okay, so that's part of something I
That's
offer to the parents.
great.
Then the third one is the child who basically ignores the issues, right? They go off and they'll go get busy with their friends. They'll get busy in sports. They'll get busy with arts and crafts, whatever it is that causes them to have to stay away. I don't have to be at the house, whether it's at mom's or dad's. I had one family that came in. I was working with both parents. And mom says the relationship that we have is great. I have a great relationship with my child. And I said, that's wonderful. I said, how can you tell? Well, we get along, we talk, whatever. Okay, great. I talked to Dad. Dad says, I never see my child. I said, well, how come? What's the issue with that? I said, well, they're either playing sports, they're either in the band, they're out with their friends, and I said, does the child do that on your time too, Mom? And it's like, well, yeah, she's busy. She's doing that as well. And I was like, so neither one of you really get time with your kid. And I said, do you think it's a possibility that she does that so that she doesn't have to deal with this? And they just kind of look at me kind of like, wait a second. And I'm like, look, your kids are doing one of three things because their job is to fulfill that hole that you've created. Not intentionally, probably. I put a lot of pressure on our parents. It's their responsibility to be there for the child, not the child to be there for the parent.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's I don't know if it's a symptom or more of a reaction
Yeah.
to the situation. So that's what we see.
Yeah, that's good. When I think about from a teacher, like as an educator, and when I was in the classroom, and you're seeing this, and you may have very capable children that can do the work, but from what you're saying, sometimes they're not doing it not because they can't, but because they're trying to fill that hole that you're mentioning. Then it ends up impacting, educators, because the teachers deal with these situations all the time. And it's just very fascinating what you're saying here. But that's great insight. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, is it true that children of divorce struggle more academically and their aspirations for moving on to college and things like that can suffer?
I think
And what is the reason for that?
they absolutely can.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's that cohesiveness, that lack of support, and that lack of feeling safe to fail, safe to try harder things. Because if I fail, who's going to catch me? Are they so caught up in their drama that they're not going to see that I am struggling? And so they struggle to have that safety net, I guess you could say, and that strength in themselves to know it's okay if I fail because mom and dad are there to catch me if I do. And just knowing every step of the way they're going through that step with all those struggles, even 10 years post-divorce, they're still in the middle of the two houses, and there's just that lack of stability.
Yeah. You mentioned something, Michael, about them coming together. So that when you're not amicable with someone and you have to figure stuff out together, how do you handle like school meetings, conferences, and things like that with somebody that you're...
You have to quiet the ego first. You can't come in with your agenda, and I think that's what a lot of parents do when they're litigating. Is they have what they believe is right. I call it their narrative. It's the story they tell themselves about what needs to happen. Because everybody has the answer. They know what the problem is, and they know what the solution is. Both parents actually have it, and guess what? The problem is usually the same. The solution's usually different.
Yeah.
So what I tell parents is if you're going to a school meeting and the teacher's talking about your child or the principal or whoever, if you're in an ARD meeting or a 504, whatever it is, your job is not to go in with your agenda. Your job is to go in to listen to what's being presented and what we can do best for the child. And that's really what you have to do is you have to quiet your mind and not listen for what you believe and want, but what the child needs and what the school needs. And when you can do that, that's when you can have probably the best conversation. But that also is helpful when you're having a counseling meeting with your other parent to do the same approach. So that's probably the most important thing is quiet the ego. Don't make it about what you believe is right. Listen about what's important for the child and let the school kind of guide you. They're almost acting as a mediator in that sense because their only job is to help your child be successful in school. They don't have an agenda.
Yeah.
That's why it works.
They do. Their agenda is that the child is successful.
So if you walk in saying, I want the same thing, because if you ask both parents, do you want your kid to be successful in school? They're both going to tell you, yes. And you have to say, then it's not about what you think is the most appropriate. It's about what the school is trying to help you understand is needed so that the child can be successful in the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions from our Facebook family.
Yay.
How would you recommend families deal with children's extracurricular activities schedules?
That's a great question. Once again, coming together and working together as a team is what's best in the best interest for the child always. I think it's in a perfect world if the parents can work together, sign the kids up for what they want to do, not what you think they should be doing, and then come together and make an agreement. Some parents, everybody comes to every game and every practice, and that works for them. Other parents say, on my time, I'll handle practices. We can go to all the games, but on your time, you handle practices. Communication is the key.
Yeah.
So as long as everyone can be on one page, then there's no reason we can't all coexist in that world to show that support for the child. Mm-hmm. And if practices are happening, not everybody has to go. I think that's a stressor a lot of parents have. Even as a married couple, you don't always get to go to every child's practices. Sometimes you have to split the kids up. Exactly.
Yeah.
So as long as we're all on the same page, we're supporting the child the best we can, and we're doing the best we can, that's all you can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
What happens, I think, with a lot of parents is they'll get excited for their children to want to play sports, or their child may come to them and say, "I want to play baseball with my friend Tim," and so the parent will say, "Well, if you want to play baseball, I'll sign you up." But what I think is helpful is let's get both parents involved. Say, "Hey, Tim or Johnny or whoever the kid is approached me and said they want to play baseball with Tim. How do you feel about baseball? Well, how are we going to do practices? Well, let's talk about it, and let's see what we can do, because that's what the child's requesting." So this issue's come up in counseling because a kiddo has told one parent they want to do one sport, but told the other parent they didn't want to do that sport because they were afraid that parent wouldn't agree with it. Oh. And so that's that kid. That's the gatekeeper. Makes sense? Trying to maintain peace. So the parent says, well, they wouldn't lie to me, but they would lie to you. Well, they wouldn't lie to me. They'd lie to you. So who are they lying to? Well, they're not lying to anybody. The truth is they don't want to create a problem.
Yeah.
But deep down inside, I promise you, they want to be around their friends. They want to be in activities. So to answer that question, the very first thing you do is, if you want your child to play a sport or do an extracurricular activity, is talk to their parent about it first and see that feel. If you're getting red flags right from the beginning, it's an issue. Don't do it until there's a discussion made. But when let the child kind of guide you on what they want to do. I had one parent that offered options, said, "Hey, instead of just saying baseball, what other sports are you interested in?" "I'm interested in soccer. I'm interested in basketball." "Okay, great." So when they talked to the other parent, they said, "Hey, he's mentioned 3 different sports he's interested in playing, or she is interested in playing. Which one of those 3 would be okay for you?" Mm-hmm. And now they're feeling like they have a choice in the matter. Mm-hmm. The other parent does, in regards to what the child really wants anyway.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then they can say, "Well, let's do soccer. I can handle that. Fantastic." So we come back and say, "Hey, your dad and I agreed on soccer. Your mom and I agreed on soccer."
Mm-hmm. The agreement is key.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome, because then the kiddo's like, "Oh, I don't,"
Yeah.
Because kids will tell us they'll be playing a sport, and they'll turn and look in the stands, and they're so fearful of, are my mom and dad together, not together? Is there an issue in the stand? So the kids aren't even paying attention to the game. They're worried about looking back into the stands and going, "What's going on back there with my parents?"
Wow.
And so one of my questions I asked the kid is, "What would it mean to you to see mom and dad sitting next to each other at your next sporting event?" And the kid goes, "Well, what are they doing?" I said, "Watching you." They're arguing.
Right.
They're watching you. And just like, that would be weird. Is the first, because think about that. Would that be weird for us to have our parents sitting watching? No. But for a child to see my mom and dad who don't get along sitting in the stands watching my game would be weird. And I said, would it be the kind of weird you hope for? And a lot of times the kid will say, it would be awesome.
Wow.
And see, that's what's amazing to me is it wasn't the sport as much as it was seeing the unification. Because once that is there and it's stable and they see it, then they get to go play their sport. Then they get to go be those kids, the kids that you want to see, the kids you want to see smiling and laughing with their buddies and playing a team activity and winning their games. That's what you want to see your kids doing anyway. Well, guess what? It's foundational. It starts from the bottom and works all the way up.
Because it's not about the parents anymore. It's about them supporting their child. They're laying aside their personal differences to cheer on their child. And what I hear like you're saying basically in life is you want the parents to be able to cheer on their child through what it is, and that's just a symbol of it through sports.
So can I fast forward? There's one question I think is really special that I've used many times. I asked parents, I want to fast forward this for a second. Let's put the sport aside for a second. I said, it's your child's wedding day. And I'm just curious, are you hoping to go to the wedding? And one parent will say, yes. Ask the other parent, are you hoping to go to the wedding? Yeah, I am. And I say, what do you think this child needs to remember about you as parents so that they're willing to invite both of you there?
Oh, gosh.
And that's how deep I have to go sometimes to help them realize what this is really about. So those are questions I like to leave with people if they're listening, to say, hey, fast forward for a second and look backwards, because all this is going to become a memory for them.
Right, because your wedding is such an emotional time anyway, and you're like, I can't have the two of them together.
Right.
I've got to invite one or the other, and yeah, I want this to be a special day. I don't want my parents to ruin this special day. Gosh, that's got to hit them really hard.
And I think something that's overlooked so often that I've learned in working with all these amazing kids, in the end, the kids want the parents to be happy. Mm-hmm. So they'll give you the answer that results in smiles on both and it doesn't matter if the kid's 3 years old or 22.
Yeah.
They want to see their parents happy. So if they'll tell you they can't sit next to each other because I want them to be happy at my game, I don't want them to be arguing. So I think in the end, that's all they want. They want their parents to be happy.
Yeah. Let's just take a quick break to say that if you have any questions or comments for our guests, please give us a call at 214-431-5062. We have a couple more questions on Facebook.
Okay, so one question is, do you have questions parents can ask themselves to make sure they are putting the child first and moving away from making it about themselves?
I love that. I like to know who that person's
Jorge.
calling.
That's Jorge.
That
Gamba.
is a phenomenal
Great
question. Thank you, Jorge. Good question. We're going to answer that. Brooke, did you want to take that first part, or you want me to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think depending on the age of the child, the first thing I would do, I'm very child-centered in my therapy, and I would look at the child and say, are you getting what you need? If the child's old enough, directing those questions to the child. Is there something I'm missing? Is there a gap in here? I'm all about empowering that child to have their own voice to say, this is what I need. And I think as the parent, you sometimes have to step back and think, is this what's making her happy, or am I doing this for myself? And I think that's true for any parent.
Yeah.
Is my child playing soccer because I want him to, or is he playing soccer because is he truly find joy in playing soccer? So I think as long as they are able to reflect on that and look at their kid and say, does this really make them happy, or are they doing this for me? Take that step back, a couple steps back maybe.
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that a parent can do is ask the first question, which is, what does my child need? And then make a list on what do I want. So what do I want versus what does my child need, and see if they even match. And so that's how you can start with the kind of the processing between, am I putting my child first, or am I putting what I believe and what I want first? Mm-hmm. So you basically draw a line right down the middle of a page. Child needs, my wants, and you list them out. Now, if you want to get real creative, you go to your child and say, hey, can you make me a list of the things that you need and the things that you want? And then compare the lists.
Wow.
And then that will help you know if you're on point for your kid versus if you're doing it for yourself. Because sometimes this is how I learned this. When I'm in counseling, I say, hey, what did you find helpful today in our session? The kids will answer a question like that in a way that I'm like, I did not know that was helpful at all. I didn't even realize it.
Wow.
Because it's usually not the thing you think.
Right.
And so that's the way to check in, is you have to assume you could be wrong. I think I maybe said this quote last time, but the only sure barrier to truth is the presumption that you already have it. If you think you already have the truth.
For a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Say that again.
Let's let that marinate.
Marinate.
Say it again.
Marinate on the
I
heart.
didn't come up with this quote, okay, but and I don't know, I can't tell you the person who quoted it, but it's so powerful. The only sure barrier to truth is the presumption that you already have it. If you can just start with saying, I might be wrong, that's the first step in learning what is needed.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is so good. All right. I'm getting emotional here, and I'm
Head shaking.
Right.
I'll take the next question, Bill. I got this, baby.
well. I wanted to, before we go to that, I want to ask, how much should we share with the school about what's going on?
Oh gosh, what a great question, Brooke. You worked in the school. You can probably explain what was necessary for y'all.
Any sort of court documents are always, if there's any sort of, I hate to always go to the negative, but any sort of restrictions on possession or anything, the schools need that information, absolutely, because they can't support that if they don't have it. You can't come in and say, my ex-husband's not allowed to be on campus. They're going to say, I need documentation, or they are coming. And then after that, I think it's up to, you and the parent to decide to, if it's fresh, have a meeting with that teacher. Again, I am very child-centered, so I think if your child's old enough, ask them, do you want the school to know we're going through this, or would you rather us just kind of handle it as long as you maintain your grades and you maintain a positive role? Do you want us to leave it out? I think that's extremely important. But the more the teachers know, or at least the counselors on campus or administrator or somebody knows, that way if Johnny has a really rough week and nobody understands why, nobody can really support him. But if the counselor knows, okay, Johnny's parents are finalizing the divorce and custody is probably changing, then the counselor can be there for him and just kind of knowing that, okay, there's a lot going on at home. Because Johnny may not voice that.
You're right, and I think school counselors don't get used like they should, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Talk about that.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if a school counselor had the opportunity to know, hey, by the way, John, we'll use Johnny again. He's always Johnny. Yeah, always Johnny.
Poor Johnny.
Yeah, I feel bad for Johnny.
Johnny's going through. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you. But if Johnny had the opportunity, not necessarily to have to know, but the school counselor knew about what was going on with Johnny and kind of keeping that confidential, it helps preserve the child, I think, in the school, but it also gives an outlet. If Johnny's having a rough day, he's struggling, the teacher, he can request, hey, I want to go see my counselor if it's okay, and the teacher releases him to the counselor, and they have their little meeting, which I think is another way to do that, which I think would be helpful. I really want to help the school counselors get back to doing what they're trained to do, which is therapy.
And we've talked about we need to have a school counselor show, because I think we have no idea what the school counselors do, and they can be so instrumental in helping the kids if they're actually used. I know they're already swamped, but
the school counselors I have met, they are phenomenal. They do it. And I just think that's it's a resource that's not getting utilized the way that it could.
Yeah.
So just my opinion.
Sometimes there can be a court order against a parent, and they don't know, or maybe a parent's not supposed to pick up that child on a particular day from school.
There's always documentation to show that.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell people all the time is if they just tell you, you just say, great, can you bring me the documentation?
Right.
Yeah, always.
Let me ask you about the documentation. If you have a situation where you've got maybe a dangerous situation, but I believe both parents are allowed to have access to the school's records. Is that correct?
So the custodial rights would show that. If a parent has sole rights, then no. In any other custody rights, from my understanding, a parent can have access to the school records.
Okay. Now, if there's sensitive information about their like address and things like that you might not want somebody to know, maybe in an abusive situation, how does the school protect against that?
Well, I think you have to look at school policy first. I think the school policy is most important. I think you have to make sure that your principal is aware of it and kind of following whatever their policies and procedures are, number one. But the way that I hope it would be handled is if anybody ever has the fear that if I share this information, I'm putting the child in danger, I hope they don't share it. Just take the risk and just say, hey, if they're going to sue you and take you to court, let it be. Let them. It's just going to cost them more money anyway, and they're probably not going to do it. But they're just mad. And that they're saying that because they're angry, but really in hopes that you always put the child first. That's what we do in therapy, and that's what I hope will always happen to the schools. Is if I share this information, I think I'm putting the child in danger. Then you don't share it. Just say, hey, sorry, I can't share it with you. And but have your administrator back that up. The last thing you want to happen is you say that to a parent, and then the administrator goes, well, you have to give it to them. You got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to know what's happening.
Or at least redact the information that is
which we've
address
done.
and things like that.
Yep.
Block it out so that they can't see that part.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So another question I thought of is what happens if parents are not together anymore, and then one of them or both of them move on to a new relationship?
That's a good question.
How does that impact? What are the impacts it has on the dynamic with the parents and the dynamic with the child?
That's an awesome question, Brooke. We have so much for that one.
That's a fully loaded question.
Show.
Oh yeah.
We'll try to make that small answer, but go ahead, Brooke, if you want to take the first swing at that.
I feel like I'm being repetitive, but I think communication is the backbone to that being successful.
Yeah.
Going into that new relationship is always an important. The way you do it will form that relationship for the child. So if you rush this, if mom rushes the new husband in and says you're going to call him dad and he's moving in next week, you've never met him, that happens. Then the kids, what are they going to do? They're going to automatically reject that person because I already have a dad. Even if I'm not close to him, dad's not a name I want for somebody new in my life. I don't like the dad I have. Why would I want another one?
Right.
So I think just have, moving slow. Unfortunately, anyone who has been divorced and has children, starting a new relationship has to go slow. It has to go at a healthy pace for when the children are involved. You typically don't introduce the children until you're to a point where it's a stronger relationship. I've seen situations where they try to hide it from the other parent that they're in a relationship, and that doesn't do any good because Johnny goes home from mom's house and tells dad, oh, mom has a boyfriend. He moved in last week. All of a sudden you're going back to court because dad's mad that there's a boy he doesn't know about living in the house. In a perfect world, that communication is there, and there's nothing wrong with having step parents. It's fantastic. I tell my kids, you have 4 parents that love you. That's amazing. Yeah. But that's when it's done in a healthy manner.
And there's some phenomenal step parents. Matter of fact, I had a case where I think the step parents, both the stepmom on one side and the stepdad on the other side, they were more workable than the mom and dad, and I got more done working with them in the session.
Of course, because there's not that tension,
emotional baggage,
exactly.
the baggage,
and it worked well. And that was I've had 1 or 2 cases like that, but there's been other times where the step parent is so involved in the case, in what's going on, that it actually overshadows the actual parent. So the kids start realizing the stepmom or the stepdad is the one that's got the strength and the pull here, and that makes me sad because I tell step parents, your job is to support the parent, not to be the parent for the child. You're there, and yes, the child should respect you as a parent and everything else, but your job is to support your husband or your wife. Not to take in that role. So I had one dad in a case where he told me to communicate with the stepmom. He communicated with my wife. If scheduling sessions, communicate with my wife. And I said, well, is she mom? Well, no. And I said, well, my understanding is parents were court ordered to do counseling here, and you're dad, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'll be talking with you. And
how'd that go over?
He didn't like it. and I said, well, but thank you. But it gives me insight to the system.
Yeah.
That's what the child's dealing with. So when mom comes into the session and says, stepmom's the one who's doing everything. She's the one sending the emails. She's the one sending the stuff. And I said, do you communicate with her? Well, no, I'd want to communicate with dad. Well, then I will communicate with both of you. Because dad's not going to change his system in his home. If he wants you to communicate with his new wife, then mom's going to have to do that. But do it together. You can say, I'm happy to do that as long as it's with both of you. Yeah, because you do it with one. Stepmom's alliance is not toward mom. Stepmom's alliance usually is toward her husband.
Right.
Does that make sense? So if something doesn't go right in there, they're going to go blame mom. And that's not fair to the mom in that situation. So step parents can create a really cool, unique dynamic that can be very helpful if it's done appropriately and correctly. And I think it goes back to you're supporting the parent. Your job isn't to take over for the parent.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good insight.
Got another Facebook question. So if a teacher sees that there's stress in the student due to custody struggles, what's the best way for a teacher or school counselor to reach out to parents?
Great question.
I think just whoever has that rapport with the parents, the best rapport, is probably the best person to reach out. Again, open communication is the key. Letting the parents know, we've maybe even calling a parent-teacher conference, not blaming it on the divorce, but we've noticed the past couple weeks, we'll go to Timmy instead of Johnny, that, Timmy has really been struggling. Are there changes in home? And that's something in the schools I used to ask a lot. Are there any changes at home that we need to know about? Instead of pointing the finger and saying, y'all's divorce is hurting your kid. Are there any changes at home? Has there been any tension at home? Anything new that we need to know? They just moved out of their childhood home because they got divorced. That's hard on a kid.
Really.
Yeah.
And I think if both parents are involved, and that, and there's divorce, keep both parents in the loop.
Absolutely.
Because when you keep one out of the loop, that's when it creates a bigger issue. So I just say, just put both parents in the email. If you're going to communicate and say, Timmy had a rough day today, it's okay to let both parents know, because remember what I was talking about, kids that create problem. Sometimes it unifies them. So if you send both parents have to come together and you get the same message. Does that make sense? So
what do you think about having separate but equal meetings with the parents? So you have one meeting, like a parent-teacher conference with one parent and then one with another, or even 2 ARDs. I don't know if they would do 2 ARDs. If there's an inability to get together without it being a problem.
Well, what a lot of parents will do is, if they've had a history with the other parent, like if there was abuse or some kind of domestic violence, then a lot of parents will request that, and you try to make that, you try to help them with that, because you're not going to get the best version of the parent if they're sitting in the room and they're completely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I don't allow them to make an excuse for something like that, because we're not here to talk about your relationship with each other. We're here to talk about your child, and that's still your child. So if the school's willing to do that, that's fine. But when they're in the middle of litigation, all the time parents are always thinking that something's being left out for them. But when they're not in the middle of litigation, it helps. Just yesterday, one of the judges in the court asked me, she said, if this court case was over, would that allow this child to be more effective in counseling? I said, absolutely, because the litigation isn't hanging over the head.
Oh.
Makes sense? Because it's over.
Yeah.
And now it's just, this is what we're doing. And now they can focus on therapy, not where am I going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, research. I saw a study that said that that children from stable, wealthy, well-educated, well-put-together families struggle to cope more with divorce and see more traumatic experiences than children that come from more dysfunctional families.
I think I
it looks like
why.
that's true from y'all's faces.
I think I know why.
Tell us about that.
That was a salivating answer to this question.
I know, we
Cheesing. Radio audience, they're cheesing right now.
Yeah.
They're ready to dive in.
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to have you heard the term of lawnmower parenting? Did we talk about that before? So helicopter parenting.
Yeah.
Kind of, you
Bulldozer.
Oh, yeah. So lawnmower parenting is let's remove all the obstacles, right? So you kind of create a clear path and make point A to point Z really simple and easy for the child. So when a parent does that, what ends up happening is you take away all their ability to develop resiliency. Does it make sense? Because they don't know how to deal with problem. So it becomes more of a struggle. Now I've got this to face, and I've never had to face problem before, right? I always had my lunches made. I always was able to go to school. My parents were always involved. And now they're, boom, split. Their whole foundation is gone. They have no idea how to deal with it. You take a kid from who's had struggles along the way, they have to develop certain resiliencies to that.
That's so great.
That's what I think is happening in these situations. I think that's why you're getting that kind of data. That's just an opinion. I have no research to support my thought on that, but that would be my thought based on what you just stated in your research.
Brooke?
I mean, the resilience is huge. And I mean, kids have to learn how to fail. And that's something our kids are missing these days.
Yeah.
They're never allowed to fail. They've always got that string attached. It's like, as soon as you fail, I'm going to pull you back and I'm going to catch you. They don't, when they are in that organized, every next step is picked for you. As soon as a little bump comes in their road, their whole world is just in disarray and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So when you're used to, dodging bullets just to say, you know how to be flexible and move around things and adapt, and you know that it's okay that I failed. That's going to make me stronger. I'm not a failure. I just built some strength because I failed and I've overcome that and I'm moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
We had an episode, Jorge Gamma came in and talked about teaching your child how to fail well.
Oh, that's good.
And so if you have not listened to that, you should go back and listen to that. He provided some incredible insight. Yeah, well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We probably could have gone another hour on this. But as always, we want to let you guys know what's going on with Noggin. So what's happened with Noggin coaching, Dave?
So this interesting phenomenon happens, I think, with teachers and students. Once you turn the 4th of July corner, I think before 4th of July, you're like, woo, I'm free. Teachers, I'm free. But something about when you hit that July 4th, it's like, wait a minute, I only have about a month left. And parents, so school is coming back around the corner, parents. And SAT scores are coming back now. They took it in June. And so now's the time to really start thinking about how am I going to prepare my child for the fall? How am I going to help them, shore up the stuff, the gaps that I had from prior school year? And now is a great time. I'm getting parents and requesting opportunities to work with their children. Either they want to get ahead for the fall, or they want to make sure that they're filling up those gaps from prior. And so, if you're interested in getting any type of academic coaching to help get your child stronger and ready, prepared, please reach out to me. You can reach me at info@noggineducation.com, and that's Noggin with 2 G's.
All right, thanks. So on the Noggin Educational Foundation side, today through August 4th, we are having the hashtag Bought a Backpack Challenge. So what we do is each summer we collect brand new backpacks for the students who participate in our summer math and reading program, and as well we adopt a local Title I school. So we challenge you to take the hashtag Bought a Backpack social media challenge, and it's easy. All you have to do is, number 1, buy a backpack. Number 2, take a picture with your backpack. And number 3, post the picture on social media and tag a few friends to do the same. And if you don't happen to be in the DFW area, but you have Amazon Prime, you can donate by ordering from our wish list. So for more information, head to nogginfoundation.org. So, David, what's happening next week?
So next week, we'll talk about the benefits of student volunteerism, and with us from Kiwanis International will be Marshall Craigle, and Arlington ISD teacher and Key Club faculty sponsor Brandon Locust to talk about the importance of volunteerism in students.
All right, we're looking forward to that. And as always, head to our website, schooldazedshow.com, for more information. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show.
Ever.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and pretty much anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. And also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's at Noggin Foundation, and that's Noggin. And last but not least, we always want to end our show by saying that David and I are parenting by grace. We depend on God to give us the wisdom and strength we need to raise our kids into flourishing adults. And if you want to know more about that, feel free to email us at info@schooldazedshow.com. Have a great week.
School Dazed is sponsored by Noggin Educational Foundation. At Noggin, we provide free educational resources to students from low-income families and support to their parents like the preceding broadcast. School Dazed is made possible by the generosity of listeners just like you. Please consider donating to Noggin at Noggin, Noggin, Foundation.org.